We are getting our first look inside Asiana Flight 214 after it crashed on landing at San Francisco International Airport. The National Transportation Safety Board now on the scene, releasing these pictures to the public. You can see the charred interior of the plane, the seats crushed together, and the oxygen masks dangling from the ceiling. Good morning, everyone. I'm Greg Jarrett in for Bill Hemmer here in America's Newsroom.
And I'm Patty Ann Brown in for Martha McCallum. We are learning new details about the pilot who had flown just 43 hours on a Boeing 777 when he attempted to land this aircraft. The NTSB now says the plane was traveling too slow and too low before it hit the seawall in front of the runway, the tail section breaking off the plane as it skidded across the runway.
Take a look at the aftermath. Caught on this amateur videotape just moments after the impact, you can see the emergency chutes deployed and then passengers running for their lives. The plane then becomes engulfed in smoke as firefighters try to put out the flames. Michael Kay is a retired military helicopter pilot, and he joins us now live. Michael, this particular pilot was still in training, we understand, and this was his first landing at San Francisco International Airport with that kind of plane, the Boeing 777. So is that essentially where this thing is heading?
I think what we need to understand here, and the thing that I'd like to make absolutely clear, is that the handling pilot, who was relatively inexperienced, we do know from the relevant agencies that he had only 43 hours on type on the 777. But what we must note is that he wasn't the overall captain in charge of the aeroplane. That was an instructor captain that had over 3,000 hours on the 777 and was a very experienced captain within the airline and on type. So what was happening effectively, and this happens throughout all of the airlines in order to maintain the experience levels and the throughput, is that this relatively junior pilot will have been given the opportunity to make an approach in order to increase his experience, in order to increase his capability. And that should have been done in a very measured way with the instructor captain overlooking him at all times.
Well, the NTSB is saying, Michael, that they were too low, too slow, asked to try again. I mean, why wouldn't the instructor captain, the instructor pilot, have said, hey, look at your speed here. You're too slow. I mean, it wasn't just slow by a few miles per hour. It was really slow, sufficient for a stall.
Well, let's look at actually what we know. The NTSB have already told us, both from data from the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder, we know that at 7 seconds there was a voice in the cockpit that asked to increase speed. We know at 4 seconds to go there was the stick shaker, which is effectively a little device that shakes the stick, which means that the aircraft is on an incipient stall, which could lead to a catastrophic loss of lift. And then at 1.5 seconds to go, there was a voice within the cockpit that said go around, which effectively is an order to apply full power and take the aircraft out of danger, fly around in the circuit and come back and make another approach. So we do know that those actions were given. The question is, should they have been given earlier?
Well, I mean, the answer is obviously yes, right?
Well, in terms of the outcome, absolutely. But what we need to understand through the NTSB is how this position, how we came to this position, or how the crew came to this position, given that for most of the approach, the information that we have so far tells us that it seemed to be fairly stable. The throttles were idle and the pilots were making a steady approach. But what I would say about SFO, and particularly 28 left, is that the approach is a fairly complicated approach, and the crew will have been fatigued also. They will have been coming to the end of a 14-hour day, and then this relatively inexperienced pilot is given a VFR approach to make. Now, what this means is that...
Visual flight. Yeah.
Visual flight rules. So, effectively, visual flight rules mean that there's a cloud base of greater than 3,000 feet and visibility in excess of 5 miles. But most airline pilots make IFR approaches, and with IFR approaches go semi-automated systems and fully automated systems. So when there's an opportunity to make a VFR approach, it's usually without the fully automatic systems on the airplane. So the crew will have been fairly tired. The approach is a complex one because the threshold is protruding out into the sea. And then the handling, the captain instructor, who's obviously monitoring the situation, won't have good visual references in the right-hand seat. We know that the weather wasn't particularly good that day, and that will have led to a glassy surface on the sea. When you have a glassy surface on the sea, it's very hard to pick up rate of descents, rate of closures, and airspeed. So I think the information is telling us that the approach was quite complicated.
All right. Thank you very much, Michael. Good to see you. Appreciate it.